Is this art? Or is this art? Or is this art? What about design? Is this design? Or is this design? Or is this design? Is this anything at all? Art and design, two words that are as incorrectly substituted with one another as improve and improvise. Much like the example above, art and design have just about nothing in common. Today is one of those days when we're going to put on a turtleneck and talk about just another pretentious topic, which is art versus design. What's the difference? Is there a difference? And if so, what is it? Ladies and gentlemen, this is art. How do I know? Mostly because it doesn't make sense and it costs more than a house. No one understands it. It wasn't made to be understood. It was just made to express a feeling or an emotion or an idea. Understanding isn't really the point of it. Making sure that it's understood in the way it was intended was not part of the deal. It's about expression, it's about self expression or cultural expression or emotional expression. It doesn't really matter, it just needs to be an expression, or as the artist demonstrates here, it's an expression of fondness of dots. Art is about communicating feelings or abstract ideas, or just to make you stop and think for a second about what is it that I'm looking at and what could it possibly mean. And that's exactly wherein lies the beauty. It needs to make sense, but not necessarily to the viewer, but the artist instead. Neither Picasso or Van Gogh or Andy Warhol really cared about if you got the point of their art. It's possible that maybe they didn't either. Art was just supposed to be an expression, the meaning of which is supposed to be open to interpretation, but never meant to be understood. Art is subjective. You could stand in front of a painting for hours and ponder its meaning and come up with absolutely nothing. And that's perfectly fine because art doesn't owe you an explanation. Design does, art doesn't. Art exists to exist. The idea that art exists for its own sake is known as art for art's sake. And it's expressed by the French phrase l'art pour l'art. The concept suggests that art has an inherent value, independent of its subject matter or social, political, or ethical significance. The phrase was coined in the early 19th century by French philosopher Victor Cousin. It was central to the aestheticism arts movement of the late 19th century in Europe. The concept of art for art's sake emphasizes the autonomy of art, and it suggests that its beauty and aesthetic experience are more important than any external function or message. Art should be judged purely on its own terms, according to whether or not it's beautiful or meaningful, not on the basis of its useful. That's not the point of art. An extension of this thought process reinforces an idea that art cannot be made with the intention of solving a practical purpose. For example, if you make a painting and it's on a piece of canvas, it's art. But if you make the same painting on a computer, it's still art. But regardless of if you make it on canvas or the computer, as long as it is just an expression, it is art. But again, regardless of if it's on a computer or canvas and it has some messaging on it which gives you any sort of information, like a poster, it becomes a piece of design. Another example is sculpture. This is a sculpture, and so is this, but only one of them is art. One might argue that the latter is artistically made. Sure, okay, that's a completely valid argument. But the point is that there is a sculpture which is art, and then there's another sculpture which was made with the intention of solving a practical purpose. So one of them becomes art and the other is design. While art is not generally intended to solve practical problems, it can help people improve their problem solving skills. It can give perspective, it can spark an idea, which are all philosophical, unintended consequences of art. Since it wasn't made with the intention of solving a physical, practical problem, it is not design, it is art. Art can help people analyze observations. Art can provide a safe space to analyze observations and convert them into actionable knowledge. This can help people understand how and why things happen and how to fix them. Art can help people hone in on their problem solving skills. Art historian Amy Herman teaches professionals to read paintings to improve their analytical faculties. Art can help people understand the meaning of things. In many cultures, art is used in rituals, performances, and dances. And or even as a decoration symbol. It all means something. They often serve a symbolic purpose or a cathartic purpose or even maybe a psychological or physiological purpose, but not a practical purpose.
And in that sense, it's art, not design.
That's not to say that art can't be used to solve practical problems, but it just can't be conceived with the intention of solving a practical problem. And then there's design. Unlike art, design has a job. It has to make something useful. It needs to have a use. It is conceived with the brief to solve a practical purpose, no matter what it might be. A bottle can have artwork on it, and the aspect of the graphic can be considered art, but the bottle in itself is a piece of design. It's some art on it. Since design is made with the very clear intention to solve a practical problem, it becomes the exact opposite of art. Design is your smartphone, your bottle, even your medicine. It's about solving problems. Art could even be a splash of mud on your car. The role of design is to make things work better, simpler, or more effective, faster, more efficient. If art is the wanderer, the traveler, the expressionist, the designer is an overachiever with a day planner. The purpose of design is more akin to engineering than art. It needs to do the job. Thoughts. Design also needs to look good. It's a very valid question to ask. Why does design need to look good if its purpose is not to look good? If it's just supposed to solve a problem, why does it matter if it looks good or not? Well, Cap, well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Well, okay. If you have product A and product B, and product A looks excellent but doesn't really work, and product B doesn't look like particularly much, but it works excellently, you're going to have a choice. You could either have something that looks ugly but does the job, or you could have something that looks extremely nice and you can show it off to your friends and put it on your Instagram stories or whatever, but it's just not going to do the job. Another reason is capitalism. Sometimes a product can be better and work better, but if it looks cheap, if it doesn't have the feel of being a hardy product or a useful product, it may or may not sell. Marketing is another reason. Every single company needs to market its products, and they tell you about why you want something and or what kind of problem that product is going to solve in your life. It doesn't do so much as to tell you how effective the product is compared to rivals, which might not look as good but work better. Take cars for instance. A good design is functional and safe and efficient, and let's be honest, it needs to look good on your driveway. You want it to be fast, and you want your neighbors to envy you trying to figure out how much you spent on it. And that's one of the places where design can't quite push through. Design is often reduced to a look at me as opposed to let's make this work. The job is very callously given to the engineer who's supposed to make things happen, not very regularly what is to happen. If the car does the job right, if it's fuel efficient and safe and practical and well built and does everything, but doesn't look particularly good, you're going to have to find justifications to give to your neighbors and friends. That said, if it looks absolutely stunning but does everything wrong, it's going to find a way into your heart. It's going to be art, not design. Or just bad design. Good art, but bad design. Now here's where things get even more complicated. Art and design look like twins at first glance, but they live in completely different worlds. Art doesn't care if you get it, but design? The whole purpose of design is for you to get it. Art exists to provoke, to challenge, to make you think. Design, on the other hand, exists simply to serve. Art says, look at me. I'm deep and mysterious. Design says, use me, I'm going to make your life easier. You wouldn't want the interface of your microwave to be designed by Picasso, not if you want the product to be intuitive anyway. Speaking of things being made to serve a purpose, look at this chair. It's a masterpiece of design, aesthetically pleasing and ergonomic and utterly uncomfortable after 30 seconds. Because while design strives for function, sometimes it ends up being a bit too artistic to the point that it starts to forgo its purpose, and suddenly you find yourself sitting on a sculpture or a piece of art. Sometimes art and design can get all tangled up like wired headphones in your pocket. Take architecture. Is it art or is it design? Architects would tell you that their work is functional art, which in itself is an oxymoron, but it's true at the same time. It's one of those very few instances where art and design intersect each other at a point where you don't really know which is which. But the popular opinion is that architecture is design, which may or may not have been executed artistically. You have architects like Frank Gehry and Zaha Hadid who have made such exceptionally beautiful buildings that they can be compared to art, and they often are, but they are not art simply because you can use them. They were made to solve a practical purpose, they were made to be worked or lived in. So, of course, there's some designs which are hideous enough to be classified as crimes against humanity. I think it may be pertinent if we draw a comparison between good and bad design. It's not particularly complicated. Good design is anything that is intuitive and solves the purpose quite easily and just does the job and doesn't complain. Bad design is something which might look like good or bad, doesn't really matter. But if it fails to be effective in terms of its function, it's not good design. Things get more complicated when you try to compare good art versus bad art. Good art has a very simple explanation. It needs to not necessarily look good. It needs to be a very valid and authentic expression of whatever it's trying to do. There needs to be thought behind it, possibly technique. But what is bad art? That's a good question. And the answer to that is simple.
Bad art could be art that is either uninspired or means nothing even to the creator or has no passion or expression. If it's a random squiggle, it is bad art. If the squiggle means something or at least expresses the meaning of something or even expresses the emotion that the person was feeling while drawing the squiggle, that's fine, that's okay, that's good, that's art. It could be categorized as bad art if something doesn't use technique properly. But at the same time, it could be good art if it makes a point to not use the technique properly. It could be bad art if there is no intentionality or sense behind the art to the artist in him or herself. Or it could be bad art if it's lazy or jarring or inept or uninteresting. But given how subjective art is, there can be no standard definition. One interesting part of it is that bad art is still art. And it's going to remain art, as long as it wasn't made with the intention of solving a practical purpose.
Take graphic design, for example. It's art that solves a problem. It communicates ideas, but in a way that is direct, purposeful, and dare I say efficient. This poster isn't just decoration, it's designed to sell you something. Yes, it has some artwork going on in the background, but it also has a job to do. And in this case, art takes a bit of a backseat to design. Fashion design depends on where you're looking at it. At a fashion show, it is walking art, and I call it art because it looks however it looks, but it doesn't really solve a purpose efficiently or effectively. You want a jacket that keeps you warm, not a cardboard box that doesn't. So who wins this age-old battle? Is art better because it's free and limitless, or is design better because it actually does something? Well, quite frankly, neither, because they kind of need each other at times, and even when they don't, they exist in different spheres and fulfill different parts of our lives. Art gives design soul. It gives art structure. Without art, design would be cold and functional, like modernist buildings, for example. Gonna drop a link right there. Design would be cold and functional, just like a white good. It was the exact same complaint that people forever had about the Toyota Corolla. It was well built, it was reliable, it was fuel efficient, it was ergonomic, it did the job perfectly without complaining, but it was as exciting as porridge. And without design, art would be a hot mess of paint splatters that no one could use, much less afford. So there you go. Two disciplines which look the same but couldn't be further apart. One a whimsical dreamer, and the other a problem solver. But when they work together, magic happens. So the next time you're about to buy a chair that looks amazing but makes your back hurt, remember, you've been seduced by art, or you've ignored design.